Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. And for the third time in the 3 years of this podcast, we get to forecast a playoff game. David, how blessed are we as Steelers fans to be able to say that the 3 times that we've had this podcast being in existence, that we've got to talk about 3 playoff games, you know?
Oh, I think it's insane. And I think especially, as far as like a, production value podcast goes, the Steelers really give us the best of both worlds. They give us so much material to talk negative about, which we know always makes for longer episodes. And yet they give us another episode because we're still in the playoffs every year.
Yeah, they just figure out a way to do it. Now, the last 2 years were polar opposites because the first year we did this podcast in 2023, it was Mason Rudolph saving Christmas and leading the charge into the playoffs where they ultimately got stomped by the Buffalo Bills, and something that we probably all could have seen coming. Last year, however, it was just an absolute snowball avalanche of just terrible. And we saw the loss coming too. Like, there was nothing in us that thought that the Steelers were ever going to beat the Ravens last season. And now here we are in such a different setting, I think, even than both of those last 2 years, because we're coming off of a win, but this feels, to me at least, very different than 2 years ago when Mason Rudolph was at the helm. This feels so much different. And there's a stat out there that most of the time going into the playoffs in the last 10 years, the Steelers have lost. And whether that's a game where it doesn't really matter, where it's like, okay, they play the Browns in the final week and they just lost that game or something like that, this is just different. They won a historic game, a game that had so much emotion behind it, a game that could have been terrible. I mean, we could be talking about the offseason right now, but we're not. And now you have a veteran Aaron Rodgers, you've got a seemingly healthy TJ Watt, and you've got Cam Hayward still looking for that playoff win. You've got these guys here that are like, they're playing at the best level that they've been playing at in a very long time. I mean, at least personally for me, I'm feeling very different about this upcoming game.
I would agree. This feels so different. Those guys are so hungry, and I think we are too as a fan base. And I think another thing that makes us different is that we're home, and that we get to play a home field game in the playoffs, which we haven't since 2020. And again, we didn't really have fans during that game, so I think that that's just something that, like, no matter what your team did, when you get a home playoff game, like, it just feels different than, like, even when we were 3-game win streak with Mason Rudolph, we had to go to Buffalo. And it was like, oh gosh, so we got to go to Buffalo. And then obviously last year, we had zero chance. And so this game feels very different than the past 2 years. I'm trying to think. I have hope with this game. I don't think I really had like a strong hope in the past 2.
I'm the same way. I mean, I think that we kind of bought into the fool's gold with Mason Rudolph 2 years ago, because it's like, yes, he got us here. But then, you look at it and you're like, it's Mason Rudolph, it's the Buffalo Bills, it's Josh Allen. They didn't have a shooter's chance in that game. And then again, last year, we knew we didn't have a shooter's chance at all. But now you've got Aaron Rodgers turning back the clock in ways, running this offense as a savvy veteran. You've got the defense playing better. And I think a big aspect of this too is you have the Texans, which are historically not an exceptional franchise when it comes to the postseason,
Yeah, and especially in the cold. Like, this is something I mentioned when it looks like we could be playing the Chargers, where it's like pulling this home game, playing a team that doesn't play in cold weather. The Texans are one of those teams, and if you go back, they've won their division the past 2 years, had 2 home playoff wins, and then gone and lost to Baltimore and Kansas City in cold games. And, I think that this Texans team is probably the best defense in the league. But, I mean, they're playing in an environment that they don't play in. And I'm very interested to see, like, yes, NFL is calling them the hottest team because they have the most wins stacked up together at 9 straight. But I don't think that they're as hyped up as they seem to be.
I'm looking at this right now, and you kind of stole it from my mouth here. Their games and their winning streak include Jacksonville. They beat by a touchdown, which, that was on November 9th. That was effectively 2 months ago. They beat Tennessee by a field goal. They beat Buffalo by 4. They beat Indianapolis without Daniel Jones by 4. They beat Kansas City by 10, which I think that was a great win. They beat here's the next 4. Arizona, Las Vegas. Las Vegas was by 2. They beat Los Angeles when they were winning very early in that game by 4, and then they beat, again, the shell of the Indianapolis Colts by 8. I'm counting 2 games in that stretch that they won by more than one score. Here's the thing that I have about the Texans, and you're absolutely right. This is the best defense in the entire NFL, but their offense is not that good. It's just not, right?
No, and I think that what I'm seeing, even just, I haven't really looked into it, but just seeing like when I check scores on my phone, it seems like they only really score when they absolutely have to. Like it doesn't seem like they can score just for fun almost, kind of like us, I guess. But yeah, this offense has not impressed me at all. And I think that it bodes well for us because their offense has been underperforming in these road playoff games in the cold, and their offenses were better. And so I think that for Pittsburgh, this is a match made in heaven. 2 elite defenses going at it. We know offense is going to be limited. That's what Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin wants.
I think you're absolutely right. I think if they would have drawn the Bills, we would have had pretty much the same outlook that we had 2 years ago. If they drew the Chargers, I think that you might have a little bit of hope there just because of how battered they are. But,
Yeah.
I mean, out of the 3 teams that we knew that there was going to be a chance that we would play, and I guess Jacksonville was in there too if things went a little bit differently, but the 3 teams were going to be the Bills, the Chargers, and the Texans. I think this Texans matchup, like you said, is the best matchup that we could have drawn in this field because, again, like you said, the defenses, they're both incredible. The offenses are very spotty, but I would take our spotty offense over the Texans' spotty offense any day of the week, personally.
I agree. And I think that we talked about this a lot last episode, solely because of Aaron Rodgers. I think that, granted, a lot of Aaron Rodgers' playoff experience in the recent years has been losses, but he has so much experience, and you just got to go with experience, right? Like that happened with Tom Brady when he was on the Patriots. Like guess who's going to win in these games? Like when in 2017, when it was the Jaguars and the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, Jaguars had a huge lead. Guess who wins? The people that know how to win. My dad says it all the time when we play the Browns. Like almost always, the Browns find a way to lose, and it's like that's because that's what they do, and we know how to beat them. And so I think that like Aaron Rodgers, that's what he does. He wins. The Texans, I don't know. I don't know what you do yet. You're very, very young in this new group they got there, and their head coach, who I like a lot, and CJ Stroud, who I like more than most. Well, people are hit or miss on CJ Stroud, and I think he's still good, but it's just weird to see because they also have weapons. So I don't really know. I haven't watched the Texans offense. I don't know what's making them not get that extra step. But again, when you got those 2 offenses that are both struggling, you go with the guy who's the 4-time NFL MVP.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of this too is, and this was an amazing stat that I just dug up. You talk about how the Texans don't do well on the road in the playoffs. Well, that's unbelievably true because on the road in their playoff history, they are 0-6. 0-6.
Wow. I knew before you said that stat, I was thinking maybe one game that they had won because they've never gotten to the championship game. And yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I remember in 2019 when they were up 24-0 against the Chiefs and absolutely squandered that. So again, just like the Browns, when the Texans are away in a playoff game, they know how to lose. And that's all you can ask for because I would say, even though our last 2 home playoff games have been losses, that, well, actually 3 of our last 4 home playoff games have been losses, but when we're home in the playoffs, we find a way to win.
Yeah. And you made the mention of their 9-game winning streak, and I kind of alluded to how there might be a little bit of fool's gold there, but I think that you still have to give your respect to this team because of their defense. And as much as we've talked about how their offense is very insufficient, their defense is unbelievable. Like they're stopping these teams for practically nothing. They have given up the least amount of yards in the entire league, and they've also turned other teams over second most in the entire league, 17 times that they've forced turnovers, which is second to only the Chicago Bears. So, this is very different because I think last year with the Ravens, it's like, okay, this team was just very good all the way around. Their defense was good. They had Derrick Henry. They had Lamar. 2 years ago when it was the Bills, it's Josh Allen. The defense is what it is this with the Bills a couple of years ago, but this is a generational type of defense that the Steelers are going to have to go up against. And sure, we had a good offensive performance this last week, at least in the fourth quarter and second half at large, but they are getting DK Metcalf back. How much of an impact do you think that makes for this Steelers team, especially with the ragtag bunch of plumbers that we saw at wide receiver this last week?
I think it's a huge impact. Not really on the Texans side per se, but on our side. I think that yeah, I don't know. I couldn't imagine what we'd be like against this team without DK Metcalf back there. I think that he's the only reason that the Texans are going to have a safety. And so I think that it's just huge having him back and just having him on the field. And yeah, it makes me feel a lot better offensively, knowing that the Texans aren't as free in their schemes that they can be with him back. Even though, we didn't say this in the last episode, but a little bit of a shout out to Marquez Valdez-Scantling because I think he caught all but one of the targets that came to him. And I mean, I don't think a wide receiver really had a bad game last week. And so I think that Chris Collinsworth was right, and things are clicking. And so I'm excited to see how we go against this defense because we really haven't played this defense ever. I think the last time we played them was 23 in Stroud's first year, and this defense wasn't what it is now. And we got beat pretty bad. But again, that was at Houston. We were a very different team. They're a different team. So I'm very interested to see. I think our defense will have a good game. I'm very interested to see. I know our offense is going to start slow, but the question is, can they do, the second half ramp up and start getting things going? Because I do think that, when Boswell has 6 field goals and we beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, I think that could be all you need is 6 field goals against this Texans team.
I think so too. And for that reason, I'm looking at the way that I'm thinking this game will turn out. And the conclusion that I'm coming to is the Texans might get out early, kind of like they did against the Chargers in week 17, where they had those 2 bomb touchdowns early in the game. But then they didn't do anything in the middle, 50 minutes of that game, essentially. And then it's like it gave the Chargers an opportunity to wear down the defense to at least give them a shot at the end of the game. And it seems like that's kind of how things have been with the Texans is they're winning games, but they're not commanding any games by any means. They're squeaking by, even against some bad teams too. I mean, they played the Raiders 3 weeks ago, and they barely beat the Raiders, who are a terrible football team. So the way that I look at it, it's even if the Steelers get down early in this game, they'll either get stifled and not do anything in the entire game, or they'll get themselves back into it and have themselves a shot to win it at the end. Because I just don't think that the Texans offense can sustain success over a long period of time. And as a part of that, if the Steelers can come out hot defensively, maybe they give themselves a short field with a takeaway, maybe they have a defensive touchdown here or there. I think that really sets the tone for the game too, because I don't think this Texans team can really play catch up either,
Right. I think that it's so true. And it just goes back to we drew the best team. This is the best team for how we play football to play in the playoffs. And so, yeah, when we talked about that real hope, it's there. There are so many, I think, avenues, like you mentioned, really, was there was a couple ways this game could start. There's so many ways that we can win this game just because of how the Texans play and how we play. And so I got a lot of hope and excitement going into it.
I have a question for you, and it was kind of on the fly because you mentioned it. Are you concerned at all about Chris Boswell? Because you mentioned that it might have to be one of those where he kicks 6 field goals in a game. We saw him miss a couple in Cleveland, which is a place that he is historically not very good at. But we also, again, we saw the missed extra point just a couple of nights ago. Is there any concern with Chris Boswell for you?
Honestly, no. I trust him and I love him. And I don't know. The extra point to me feels like just an extremely fluke play. And I know like these past 3 games have not been good for him, just in general, because I think he missed one in Detroit. And so I think that like next time he kicks, I'll be watching a little more closely, but I think he's clutch. And I think that he'll be here when it matters.
Okay. I think that you saying the word clutch, it kind of eased my own spirits about that because I noticed I noticed a trend over the last 3 games. Because when he missed the chip shot against the Lions, which could have essentially iced the game there, I noticed that the way that his ball tailed off to the right, I was like, I've not seen that before. That's not something that I'm used to seeing out of Chris Boswell. And then against the Browns, the one that he missed, I think from 54 yards, I think it was, you could see that he was trying to overcorrect, almost like a golfer. You know, you slice one and then you try to overcorrect and you close your club face, you close your hands a little bit, and you try to turn over and pronate it. He tried to do that, and instead he hooked that one. And it's like, you know, you could tell that he was kind of searching a little bit in those 2 weeks where he's just having these uncharacteristic misses. And sure, he did fine. I mean, he made a 57-yarder against the Ravens just a couple of nights ago, and I was even a little bit nervous for that one. But then when he misses the one, you know, he slices it right on that extra point, I'm thinking to myself, I kind of saw that coming. And I hate to say that because, I mean, we've talked up and down about Chris Boswell and how he's, you know, one of the best kickers ever. I mean, I hate to say that I saw it coming, but I kind of did. And that's kind of why I was a little bit worried when you said that, you know, we just need Chris Boswell to kick 6 field goals. I'm like, I don't know if we can rely on him for 6 field goals, but I don't know if I'm going to change my opinion on that. I'm a little bit worried about it. But again, I think you saying that he's clutch, I think it eases my spirits a little bit because I do think that's true.
Yeah, and I think that he is definitely going through a bit of a, I don't know if it's as strong as a rut, but I think that, you know, I'm just hanging on that he's clutch because, yeah, I think that it's interesting to see what's going on because even when he, you know, missed that extra point, you know, he pulled it right and like when they cut back to him, he almost just looks like he doesn't know how he did it. But I think it helps that we won. And I think it helps that, you know, it didn't cost anything. But Chris Collinsworth was saying before that kick that he was struggling in warmups, which I mean, Heinz Field is his bread and butter. So I hope that, you know, the momentum of the whole team can kind of just help whatever's going on.
Yeah, I hope so. And, you know, as much as we talked about how this is probably going to be a defensive slog, the way that you win defensive slogs is with your kickers. And, you know, Kaimi Fairbairn on the other side with the Texans, he's a very good kicker in his own right. So, you know, as much as we have usually been able to say, hey, Boswell, you know, just do your thing and not think twice about it, this is definitely a game where Bos has to be on it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I'm hoping he does deliver, and I think we're going to need that, and it'll be interesting because, yeah, like you mentioned, the Texans kicker, like he's not the best in the world, so that's another pro I think in our favor.
This defense, and I'm looking at some of these names, Will Anderson Jr., unbelievable young rookie edge rusher. And they've also got Daniil Hunter, who I think led the league in sacks like 2 years ago, which the fact that they got them both at the same time was just crazy. And their cornerbacks have been just locked down all season long. So I guess my final question, and, you know, maybe before we, you know, give our score predictions here, is the scheme going to have to change against this Texans offense at all? Like, is the running game going to have to win the game? Is the passing game going to have to win the game? Is Aaron Rodgers going to have to pull one out of his hat and win this game himself?
I honestly think that this is one of the first games where I feel like we don't have to change our scheme. I think Arthur Smith needs to get a little bit better with some of his play calls, but I think that the scheme we have right now can beat this team. Like, I think that everything we've laid out there, we don't have to. I feel like sometimes, and even like the play right before half, that play call, I feel like we sometimes just try and outsmart ourselves and outsmart the other team. Don't do that this week because you really don't have to.
Okay, that's a good input there. And again, the addition of DK Metcalf coming back, that adds a threat, which will open up other things because when you don't have a wide receiver one on the field, the defense can kind of overcommit to some other things. So I think that, you know, even though the Ravens defense is not very good, and, you know, we saw Kyle Hamilton get injured, and that I think really had a big part into what went on in the secondary for Baltimore. I think that DK Metcalf coming back is a huge thing. And again, the way that our defense has been playing, I mean, Nico Collins is their best wide receiver. Outside of him, I'm not really too concerned about anybody else. I guess maybe who Jaden Higgins, or do you have Jaden Higgins or Jalen Noel on your fantasy team?
I have Jaden Higgins, so I do like him, but I agree that he's still in his rookie year. I think they're still trying to figure him out. I think he could be really good in the future, but I don't. He's not a threat yet. He's been making some plays the past few weeks, but he's not like he's not like Zay Flowers or Nico Collins yet.
Okay. And then, I mean, even their running back tandem, Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, I mean, neither of them had a 1,000-yard rushing season. They were kind of, I mean, it started off with Nick Chubb, and then Woody Marks has had a couple of decent games, but I mean, nothing really that concerns me, especially, again, with the way that we've been stopping the run. I know Derrick Henry had 100 yards this last game, but I mean, it's Derrick Henry. It's a little bit different than, a 30-year-old Nick Chubb and, just a kind of a spotty rookie, what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I think that they're questionable on every aspect of their offense. And so I'm excited to see what our defense can do. And hopefully our defense can have an even better performance against them than the Ravens.
All right. It's that time once again. And much to your excitement, I would assume, you have another shot to tie some things up this week as far as our predictions go. I'm 9-8. David found his way to 8-9. So even though I'm still a game up, we have another shot at it. And hey, if we win this game, then that means we have another game after that. We'll go to the divisional round and we'll try this all over again. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? Do you have a prediction in mind already? What do you want to do here?
I do have a prediction in mind, and I'll go first. Even though I was gonna say I know that I think we're gonna have the same prediction here. And it won't help my prediction score, but listen, all right, I'm all in this year. I think this is a great matchup. I think we're home. Aaron Rodgers, you just the defense is coming together a little bit more. Texans are questionable. I think we win. I think we win. We get the crowd amped up. And you know what? You know what my big prediction is that Renegade comes back. Is that we finally get, I mean, literally, I would love to see the statistic of how many times Renegade gets played and then there's a 10-plus yard play that's gained. I want it back. I think it's going to come back. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win 21 to, I'll go 16.
Okay. Renegade did not work this last week. I know you recognize that immediately because we've talked about that at length this season. And it's funny because I think when TJ Watt had his interception, Chris Collinsworth was like, yeah, we didn't need to play Renegade that time because this crowd is amped up right now. And then when they actually did play Renegade, Zay Flowers for 25 yards to get almost at the midfield,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it makes no sense. I don't understand what's going on, but it's coming back. I believe it.
Okay. David's got a win prediction, and you are indeed correct that I am in the similar spot as you. I am also predicting a win. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I'm buying the hype. I'm still high off of what just happened a couple of nights ago, and I'm going to say that the Steelers win this one, a very close one. I'm going to say this one is a 19-17 final score. The Texans give up barely 18 points a season or 18 points a game this season. I think our defense just really plays a good game, and I think it might come down to one of those renegade moments. It might come down to the Texans have the ball with a chance to take the lead, or maybe the Steelers are at that point down, and it takes a big play from Aaron Rodgers to set up them to win the game somehow. I have a good feeling about this game, and I will say, too, that I'm looking at going to this game. I will say there's probably a 2% chance that I will go to this game. It's Monday nights, and for that reason, I will say this, too. Do you remember the stat that we talked about against the Dolphins with Mike Tomlin and Monday Night Football?
I do. Wow, that's a great stat to pull.
23-0 on Monday Night Football at home for Mike Tomlin. Is this the one that he loses? Is this the one that he would lose of all the ones to lose?
Well, I tell you, he's got some rival statistics right now because you got 23-0 on Monday night. You got 0-6 with the Texans on the road in the playoffs. One of them is going to, well, that's not true, actually. They can both still happen. Hopefully that does happen. And I do think, kind of like what you were saying, we are going to get hopefully a vintage like Steeler play or just a vintage thing that wraps it up that we haven't had in a long time.
Two final questions before we wrap up this forecast episode against the Texans. First question. If the Steelers lose, what happens to Mike Tomlin?
I think it depends on how they lose. Okay. I think if they lose like how we lost to the Bills, I do think something could happen. Because again, the Ravens game, it's like, as a coach, you got away with one there. If you do what you did against the Bills, or even somewhat remotely close against the Bills, in prime time at home in the playoffs to officially make it 10 years, 10 calendar years without winning a playoff game. I think that there's some heat under there, and I think that he could get fired. And I think if he wins, I think I said this in the last episode, he ain't going anywhere until he wants to.
Okay. I agree with that prediction, and I agree with the sentiment that I think it depends on how the game goes. If they lose close, I don't think he's going anywhere. But if they get blown out in a game where it's pretty much impossible for them to get blown out, then yes, I can't imagine him surviving that. Now, my second and final question. If the Steelers lose, what happens to Aaron Rodgers after this season?
I think he hangs him up.
Really?
I do. I think that he just, he got his big moment with us, I feel like, with the Ravens. And I think that, I don't know, if I were him, I'd be thinking, can you do this twice with this team? Like, the way our offense has been. Now, granted, with an entire offseason of Aaron Rodgers, our offense could get a lot better. So that is something to look forward to. But I feel like he is, I don't know. I think part of that is me also just wanting him to retire. I think I'm ready, and I don't know if him retiring would give us what I want, but I think I'm ready to just, you know, get a franchise guy. Like, I feel like we bounced around a lot since Ben, and it's like, could have had our franchise guy with Justin Fields. I don't know how great he would have been, but I just think that, yeah, I think that, and again, it might be on how we lose. Like, if we lose really, really bad, does he want to end on that? If we lose in a close one, it's easier to end on. But I don't know. It sounds like, are you thinking that he's going to come back if we lose?
I think so. I really think that even if we lose, no matter really how we lose, I think he has enjoyed Pittsburgh so much, and I think he has enjoyed this team so much that you could really market it and say, hey, we've got the draft coming up. There isn't really a quarterback that I like in this draft.
Yeah.
I would not mind waiting one more year, personally. I mean, we'll talk about this when the time comes, but there's only one quarterback that I really want to see in a Steelers uniform next year if Aaron Rodgers ties it up, and it's not anybody that's in the draft. I'll keep that to myself for now, and we'll save that for another day. But there's nobody right now that I think fits the Steelers better for a chance to be successful than Aaron Rodgers. And I think that he also might even believe that, especially if they can get him one more guy to pair with DK Metcalf. If they lose this game, I think he comes back. I think he comes back on a cheap deal, and I think we run it back and we try to get back to where we were. And I was looking at it, the schedule we have for this next year, it's not that difficult, really. It's actually very doable. And, we've looked at it in years past, and it's like, okay, the ceiling's 10 wins. We've known that. But I'm looking at the schedule for next year, and we'll get this down the road. But I'm looking at it at first look, I'm like, it's a minimum 9 wins. Minimum 9 wins. So that's what gives me a little bit of hope to say, hey, I think he might come back if they lose this one.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And he does. Like, he loves Mike Tomlin. He loves Pittsburgh. Mock drafts are showing that there are quite a few receivers that will fall to our wherever we pick in the first round. So, I think that things do point to him wanting to come back. And I wouldn't be upset if he did. I think that you make great points, too. There's not really anyone right now where it's like, yeah, I want that person. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think I feel like the last 2 playoff games, there hasn't been a lot riding on it because we knew nothing was going to change, but I do feel like there is a lot riding on this playoff game.
There is. And oddly enough, I kind of have a similar feeling this week that I did last week about the Ravens. I mean, I predicted a win last week. We both did, but I predicted a win wholeheartedly, just believing that we would win. And again, even when they were lining up to kick that field goal, I knew somehow that they were just going to win that game. And I can't explain why, but I just knew. I can't say I have the faith and the hope to the same degree that I did last week, but I've got a little spark. I've got a little bit of hope coming into this Texans game. Again, just kind of what we talked about this whole episode is just the matchup. I think it really favors us this week, and it gives us a shot. It gives us a real opportunity to win our first playoff game in literally 10 years. And I mean, we've waited long enough for this. I can't imagine that we'd have to wait longer.
Yeah, I hope not. And I do hope that this game is just one we can take home and stack on top of this past week, too, and just finally get that playoff win.
I hope so. Any final thoughts, David, before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so. I think we got them all out there. I'm excited. I think that recently Steelers games have started very just like, how are we going to do? Like, normally my hope starts to build up towards the end of the game, like even this Ravens game. But that's not what's going to happen this week. The game's going to start, and I'm going to be hopeful, and I'm going to be in it, and I'll be ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I've got the terrible towel right next to me, even as I'm speaking right now. I'm going to hang it up over the course of this week, right in my window in the middle of Cleveland. I'm going to hang it up proudly as a Steelers fan. I've been wearing my Steelers gear into the office this week. I'm proud to be a Steelers fan right now, and I'm hoping that at the end of this week, by the time that this thing's all over, that we can truly say that we're proud to have a playoff win under our belt, and, we're moving on to play whoever knows next week. So that's the hope right now. And as far as things go on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, we're always sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. If you haven't yet, make sure you go back and listen to our Ravens recap episode. It was an unbelievable episode, just breaking down the historic matchup that we just saw a couple of days ago between the Ravens and Steelers in Week 18. That's a good episode. Make sure you listen to that one, as well as we have an Outside Perspective episode, our very first ever playoff Outside Perspective episode with a real-life Houston Texans fan. Make sure you go check that one out as well. And as always, you can always follow us on Instagram at Boardman and Gold. Let us know what you think is going to happen coming into this Texans game. We're going to put up a poll here in the next couple of days, if not having it already up already. Send us your score predictions. We want to hear it. Tell us how you think the game's going to go, and tell us, do you think Aaron Rodgers comes back if the Steelers lose this week? What happens to Mike Tomlin? We want to know your opinions. We want to field these questions. We want to field these opinions here on the podcast. So make sure that you get your stuff in on Instagram again at Boardman and Gold. And with that, myself, Zane Bloom, joined by David DeSantis, we are signing off. 3 episodes in 1 week for the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. Hopefully we can come back with another one after this Texans game. Hopefully it's after a playoff. Here we go, Steelers win at Heinz Field, the 4 seed and the 5 seed. Looking for that first playoff win in 10 years. Thanks for listening to Boardman Black and Gold. Zane and David signing out. We will see you next week.